Welcome everyone to Belmont Poetry Night. As most of you know, my name is Jacki Rigoni, Poet Laureate of Belmont, California, which I also acknowledge as unceded Ramaytush Ohlone territory. I also want to acknowledge that the role of Belmont Poet Laureate is to elevate poetry in the community. And because poetry is about speaking truth and speaking truth to power, I support Black Lives Matter. And as long as I'm in the role of Poet Laureate, so will the role of Poet Laureate in Belmont support Black Lives Matter. It has been my great honor to host this Belmont Poetry Night for the past 3 years, can you believe it, as Belmont Poet Laureate. And I looked back, we've hosted over 20 of the most noted poets from around the San Francisco Bay Area, with the intention of offering this space here to women, people of color, and LGBTQ voices in poetry, as well as you, the most wonderful poets right here in our community through our open mic. Belmont Poetry Night is hosted on the third Tuesday of the month at Belmont Library in Belmont, California. But as you know, we're not there tonight. We welcome you to join us here on Zoom each month until we can safely resume in the library, and hopefully also keep this venue going online, because we've had people join from as far as Brooklyn and Canada and even India. And so hopefully we can meet in the library one day very soon, while also inviting people from around the world who have found us here. We usually have a featured notable poet each time, but tonight we're going to do something different. So I do hope to see you here again, whether you come to just read your poems or to join in community across our screens here in our shared love, or sometimes simply like of poetry. So tonight, in honor of National Poetry Month, instead of this featured poet that we usually have, I had mentioned before that I would be reading, this would be the launch of my book, and in fact, it's actually been pushed to next month, third Tuesday. What I wanted to encourage you to do is, Belmont has agreed to purchase some of my books to give out free to all of you. So keep an eye out for that news on the Belmont Library website. And all you have to do is let them know that you'll be swinging by to pick one up, and you can get one there. And once we meet again, or if you even wanted to stop by my house, I'd be happy to sign for you. So that'll be next month. But today we're here for National Poetry Month, and I wanted to open the mic to share beloved poems. Throughout these past 3 years, I've tried to introduce and to bring in the voices of many poets that we generally don't hear, or that we don't give a platform to. And so I wanted to use this platform to bring in a range of voices. Tonight, this platform is for you and me to bring the poems that inspire us, that light us up, that challenge us, that make us think, that make us feel alive. And so I also invited some of my students to be here tonight to share their favorite poems. I'm not sure who might pop in, but if they do, I'm happy to see them. And so I'm going to open with some of my own beloved poems. You may have heard them here throughout the years if you've been coming regularly. For me, the favorite poems are those that I return to again and again, and often hear differently each time depending on what's going on in my life. And somehow I find meaning in them. Somehow they make me feel that I'm not alone, that somewhere at some time in some place someone has felt what I've been feeling, and it's a great comfort for me to know that someone else has written so clearly about what I'm feeling in the moment. So those are some of those poems I'd like to share with you tonight, and then we'll follow with our open mic. You're invited to offer a favorite poem of yours, and followed by one of your own writings if you'd like. If we have time, others who aren't, I'll put the list in the chat if you've notified me ahead of time. Most of you have. And then if we do have time, others who aren't on the list can also read. So let's wait and see what time we end up at. I like to close at 8:30 to keep you awake and wanting more. Don't want to put anyone to sleep. So otherwise, if you're just here to listen, I invite you to sit back and enjoy listening, and also take advantage of this wonderful community that we've built here. Since everyone here is only the person speaking will be on mute, you can all. I've shown you this before, but it's really nice to be able to show appreciation for the reader by using American Sign Language for applause or thank you. And you can also use the chat box to comment on the reader's reading, their choice of poem, and then also to write in a line or a phrase that particularly strikes you. And so use that chat box for that purpose. And I really like to use it especially as encouragement. So let's start right now by writing in the chat box. Your name is there, but just let us know where you're calling in from. Oh, hey, look, there's one of my students calling in from downstairs. And there's my friends, the monks. Great to have you here. Great, we have Pacifica, San Mateo, and Belmont, and mostly Foster City, most of y'all from the Bay Area. Great, I'm really glad to see you all here, and I'm looking forward to reading my own poems as well as hearing from all of you. And if you're just joining us, what we're going to do, I'm going to read first some of my favorite beloved poems and one of my own, and then we'll go to open mic where I invite you to read after that. Okay. I'm going to start with a poem that has sat on my refrigerator. Oh, did it come out of the printer? See if I can find that one. I keep a couple poems on my refrigerator and switch them out, and that kind of remind me of my place, and again, like I said, that I'm not so alone. This one particularly resonated with me when I was going through a difficult time. The line in here in the middle reminds me that even pain and sorrow has an ending. And this is called Evening by Dorian Lowe. Moonlight pours down without mercy. No matter how many have perished beneath the trees, the river rolls on. There will always be silence. No matter how long someone has wept against the side of a house, bare forearms pressed to shingles. Everything ends. Even pain, even sorrow. The swans drift on. Reeds bear the weight of their feathery heads. Pebbles grow smaller smoother beneath night's rough currents. We walk long distances, carting our bags, our packages, burdens, or gifts. We know the land is disappearing beneath the sea, islands swallowed like prehistoric fish. We know we are doomed, done for, damned, and still the light reaches us, falls on our shoulders even now, even here where the moon is hidden from us, even though the stars are so far away. This next poem is called How Dark the Beginning. And especially for my students who are here, what I want to point out is in poetry, we try to stay away from cliches and the ways that things have been said before and ways that we're so used to hearing that they've almost lost our meaning. And often when I write poetry, I look to put words together that create a new arrangement of words that says something in a new way that I haven't seen before. And it doesn't mean using fancy words. It's just a way of putting them together, almost like taking Legos apart and putting them back together and seeing something in a new way. And in this poem, I want to call your attention to the words, where is it? Good, dark. Good, such a simple word, so overused, right? And dark, a really simple word. And when you put the two together, it comes up with something really new for me. That was when I saw this phrase, I thought, oh yeah, good, dark. I know what good, dark is. So this one is called How Dark the Beginning by Maggie Smith. All we ever talk of is light. Let there be light. There was light then, good light. But what I consider dawn is darker than all that. So many hours between the day receding and what we recognize as morning, the sun cresting like a wave that won't break over us, as if light were protective, as if no hearts were flayed, no bodies broken on a day like today. In any film, it will be all right. Danger wouldn't dare show up now, dragging its shadow across the screen. We talk so much of light. Please, let me speak on behalf of the good dark. Let us talk more of how dark how dark the beginning of a day is. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, love that one. Okay. This next poem is by one of my favorite contemporary poets, Dana Smith. And I chose this poem because he is a poet who is also an activist. He lives in St. Paul. And he's really active in the communities protesting. And today, on the day where we get a little glimmer of light in the Derek Chauvin trial, a bit of a sense that some justice may come, and yet also remembering that there is still one person who has died, many people who continue to die because of rampant police brutality. What I love about his poem here, it's in a tiny one, it's even called Little Prayer, is this poem about a hopeful poem of wanting all of this disaster to end, and yet also knowing that probably it won't, and so allow me to accept what is. It's Little Prayer by Dennis Smith. Let ruin end here. Let him find honey where there was once a slaughter. Let him enter the lion's cage and find a field of lilacs. Let this be the healing. And if not, let it be. Okay, my students don't know this about me, but because they usually see me happy and encouraging, but the rest of the people here know that I get really emotional when I read poems. So it's just par for the course if you show up here. This next poem is called Wonder Woman by Ada Limon. One of my beloved poems by Ada Limon is what's it called? I can't remember the name of it. The one about, Lisa, do you happen to remember the name of that poem about the beating the horse heart? I can't remember the name of it. If someone knows it, write it in the chat. How to Triumph Like a Girl by Ada Limon is one of my dear favorites. But I love this one by Ada Limon because, again, what some of my students don't know is that I bet you I learn more from you than you learn from me. This is called Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman by Ada Limon. Standing at the swell of the muddy Mississippi after the urgent care doctor had just said, ooh, let me back up a little bit. There's a cuss word in here, so apologies first. Standing at the swell of the muddy Mississippi after the urgent care doctor had just said, well, sometimes shit happens. I fell fast and hard for New Orleans all over again. Pain pills swirled in the purse along with a spell for later. It's taken a while for me to admit. I am in a raging battle with my body. A spinal column 35 degrees bent, vertigo that comes and goes like a DC Comics villain. Nobody can kill. Invisible pain is both a blessing and a curse. You always look so happy, said a stranger once as I shifted to my good side, grinning. But that day, alone on the riverbank, brass blaring from the steamboat Natchez, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a girl, maybe half my age, dressed for no apparent reason as Wonder Woman. She strutted by in all her strength and glory, invincible, eternal. And when I stood up to clap, because who wouldn't have, she bowed and posed like she knew I needed a myth. A woman by a river, indestructible. While I am on the theme of my students, some of you don't know my real job is that I work as an education specialist for a charter school in California that works with independent study students, also known as homeschooled students. And this charter school allows students who are homeschooled to access support and funding from the state for materials, as well as other tutoring and other resources that students in other public schools get. So it's a public school, but it essentially works as independent study or homeschooling. And I meet with families once a month, and they share their work with me, and I document that for the state. And so I chose this poem in honor of the magical learning that happens outside of a school system when brains and hearts and souls are allowed to run free and explore without being too tied to standards that you're supposed to learn about California history in 4th grade, not 5th or 3rd grade. So, and I see on a daily basis how exciting it is to learn outside some of the confines. And I meet some of the most brilliant and creative humans that I know. I chose this poem by Chen Chen, who is also among my favorite poets. He's a contemporary writer. And I wanted to bring in the voice also of an Asian American poet, also to recognize all of the hatred happening here against Asian Americans, and also to elevate the voice of an Asian American poet. And the reason I also homeschool my own children through this charter, and she's not on screen right now, but I suspect she's listening, which is we started homeschooling when she was in kindergarten, and she essentially by the 2nd or 3rd weekend staged a one-woman sit-in and refused to participate, and I had to come up with some plan B. I originally called myself an unintentional homeschooler, and it was because of her. And so I've said that she's unschoolable because she's so self-taught. And this poem by Chen Chen is called "The School of the Unschoolable." So this is for for my students who are here. "The School of the Unschoolable" by Chen Chen. See the stars nightly, disobeying the night. Watch the pattering rain sketch an anarchist's map to the future, then unpattern it away. An anarchist's revision. Praise my mother, who wears a plaid hoodie over a polka dot sweater, over a simply brown sweater. Praise your fashion icon, though I doubt she's as iconoclastic. Prove my doubt so wrong. Call the sun the heterophobe it's always been. Never stop babbling to old friends or fields about your earliest whiff of banana bread. Lick the sad from the sea. And on Tuesday, flabbergast in some earthly mouthful of a way. And tonight. Isn't that fun to hear flabbergast as a verb? I love that. And I think I'll read this one because I've read it here before, but I really think it works nicely as a story in a poem, and it contains in it what I wish for the world too. And this is by Naomi Shihab Nye. It's called Gate A4, and in it I'm going to attempt, with apologies, to read words in here that are not in English. And I went back and listened to Naomi Shihab Nye's reading of this to try to get it right, but I know I'm nowhere near close. Gate A4. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal after learning my flight has been delayed 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor wailing. Help, said the flight agent. Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this. I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly. Shudawa, Shubiduk, Habibti, Stani Shwe, Min Fadlik, Shubitsewe. The minute she heard any word she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment. The next day, I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son. I spoke with him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for a while in Arabic and found out, of course, they had 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took up 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamoul cookies, little powdered sugar, crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts, from her bag, and was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free apple juice from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green furry leaves. Such an old country tradition. Always carry a plant. Always stay rooted to somewhere. And I looked around at that gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in. The shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. And so for the last poem tonight, I will read one from Seven Skirts, which is what I'm inviting you to do. Read a poem of your favorite poem of yours, and then read a poem of your own. They don't have to have the same theme or anything like that. Just want to share in poetry. This last poem is called Choices, and was inspired by a couple years ago around this time of year, walking out to my garbage bins, and over the garbage bins there was this giant vine, so heavy it was actually pulling down the telephone poles. It's jasmine, and the smell of this jasmine was just this amazing perfume that just overwhelmed any of that smell of the garbage cans. And when I went to look up the name of what kind of flower this was, because I just wanted to remember that smell and maybe plant it everywhere, it came up as common jasmine. And I thought, oh, how tragic, common jasmine. It was certainly uncommon. And then it says, or poet's jasmine. And made me realize we all have choices for how we want to see the world. So what do you want to call it? A little short poem called Choices. Whether you call them common jasmine or poet's jasmine depends on your perspective. But these vines, hugging the utility pole behind my waste bins, have decided to super bloom my garbage. So I've made my choice. Tiny priestesses in white vestments bless the air with their holy incense. I can dump 3-week-old cat litter, wafting ammonia, and still breathe the smell of forgiveness. Thank you all for your attentive listening and sharing, and I'd love to now open up the floor. If you give me just a moment, I'll put the order in the chat. And while I'm doing that, I'd first like to ask the Munk family if there's anyone over there who would like to share a favorite poem. Would you be willing to come on camera and say hello and share a poem? And if not, that's totally fine too. I'm just happy that you're here. If you would like to share a poem, you can feel free to hop on. because I know it's getting late as well. So if not, and then how about Celeste? Are you open to reading? It's okay, you don't have to if you don't. Would you like to? Okay. You can go ahead and go on camera, and then I'll pop the order in the chat for everybody else. Okay. Ready, Celeste? Yeah.
Hi. I'm going to read one of my favorite poems. I memorized it a long time ago, but I might not have it memorized now, so I'm just going to read it. I haven't read a poem in a long time. Have you got a brook in your little heart where bashful flowers blow and blushing birds go down to drink and shadows tremble so? And nobody knows, so still it flows, that any brook is there. And yet your little draught of life is daily drunken there. Then look out for the little brook in March, when the rivers overflow, when the snows come hurrying from the hills and the bridges often go. And later in August it may be, when the meadows parching lie, beware, lest this little brook of life some burning noon go dry. Also, that was Emily Dickinson. I didn't say that.
Thank you, Celeste. And it wouldn't be the same a beloved poem nights without some Emily Dickinson, so thanks for reading that. Great. Thank you. Disclaimer, will you kick us off tonight?
So I'm going to read a poem from HD, and then I'm going to read a poem from myself. They have no connection to one another. So this poem is by Hilda Doolittle from Sea Garden Night. The night has cut each from each and curled the petals back from the stalk, and under it in crisp rows. Under at an unfaltering pace, under till the rinds break, back till each bent leaf is parted from its stalk. Under at a grave pace, under till the leaves are bent back till they drop upon earth, back till they are all broken. O night, you take the petals of the roses in your hand and leave the stark core of the rose to perish on the branch. That was HD, circa 1916 or so. I'm going to read a poem of my own called Tendril Perversion. Tendril Perversion. They lay there, his thigh between her thighs, his hand below her hip, soft and weighty like wet sand. Fingertips slow frisson of afternoon sun. He heard the air move through her nostrils. Perverse tendrils, they were and were not one body. It was and was not the same as having one soul, half sleeping, in love, becoming old. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, Disclaimer. I love your choices. Really beautiful work. Thanks for sharing. And next up is Lisa Betts-Lacroix. Are you ready to read? Thank you for being here, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. It was so beautiful. I have two poems I'd like to read, but I'm actually hesitant. One of them's a little bit long. I think I'll read the one I was going to read second first, and then I'll decide if I'll read the second one or not. This poem is a poem that I discovered in my early 20s. It's actually a spoken word piece by a musician named Ani DeFranco. And I'm reading it today in the spirit of and with the gratitude for the George Floyd verdict, because it speaks to the necessity for all of us to share our stories and speak up and share what we know and to take up space and be loud. Mycue by Ani DeFranco. When I was 4 years old, they tried to test my IQ. They showed me a picture of 3 oranges and a pear. They said, which one is different? It does not belong. They taught me different was wrong. But when I was 13 years old, I woke up one morning, thighs covered in blood, like a war, like a warning that I live in a breakable, takeable body, that a woman had come in the night to replace me, deface me. See, my body is borrowed. I got it on loan for the time in between my mom and some maggots. I don't need anyone to hold me. I can hold my own. I got highways for stretch marks. See where I've grown. I sing sometimes like my life is at stake, because you're only as loud as the noises you make. And I'm learning to laugh as hard as I can listen, because silence is violence in women and poor people. If more people were screaming, then I could relax. But a good brain ain't diddly if you don't have the facts. We live in a breakable, takeable world, an ever available, possible world. And we can make music like we can make do. Genius is in a backbeat, backseat to nothing if you're dancing, especially something stupid like IQ. For every lie I unlearn, I learn something new. I sing sometimes for the war that I fight, because every tool is a weapon if you hold it right.
Oh, perfect choice. Thank you, Lisa, and really beautiful reading as well. Thank you. How are you feeling? Do you want to do another one, or what do you think?
I'd love to, but I'll leave time, and maybe at the end if there feels like there's time.
That sounds great. Let's see how it goes. And welcome to Zoe Munk. Great to see you, and Molly. We're gonna. I know we had a list there, but I just didn't. I'm gonna insert Zoe here before you, Deborah, if you don't mind, and just because of bedtimes and stuff. Just want to make sure we go early. Welcome, Zoe. Thanks. What are you gonna read for us?
I'm gonna read 2 that I wrote, and the first one's called A Banana. A yellow banana, so bright and soft. Take off its bulky armor. Mmm, delicious. Okay, and the next one is, I also wrote this one, called Trees. They bend and sway, so strong and steady, silent and unbending, quietly ready. That's it.
Beautiful. I love that, Zoe, and I haven't seen those ones yet, so quit holding back on me. Thank you, and thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Deborah, welcome. Deborah Parka is up next, and I'm really glad to see you here. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can. Okay. Just checking. Okay, I'm a little nervous. Just to let you know, I'm a little nervous. I have a piece that I just started. So it's very short. I just started the piece. It's a spoken word piece that I've been working on now, only for about a week or so. But I just wanted to go ahead and share it. Let's see. It is called Don't Fix Me. I embrace my broken pieces. Those pieces are in the process of being my own kind of beautiful. There is a negative misconception that broken is the same as defeated. But have you ever witnessed mosaic art? Pieces of glass, shells, or tile put together to form a beautiful piece of art. Only your vision can interpret what you see. That's it.
Oh, so beautiful, Deborah. I'm so glad you found us, and I'm so glad you chose to read. Thank you. And thanks also for sharing your vulnerability, because I think it's really important for kids to see that adults get nervous to read too. Thank you for sharing that as well. And next up, we have Ed Mycue. Hi, Ed. Welcome.
Hi. Hi. I have a favorite. Well, almost always she's my favorite poet. It changes. I'm not that honorable. I fall in love with other poets all the time. I think you understand that. But this is from she's been dead a long time, but I knew her very well. And this is a poem about magistrates, the longest poem she ever wrote, but I'm just going to read a piece of it. Her name is Josephine Miles, and she was a professor eventually and completely at the University of California in Berkeley, and the first full professor, a woman who was the first professor. And she lived across the bay, and I would see her from time to time. This little section is about Lincoln. Shaving, an uncle asks, "What is the face before me in the mirror?" "Well, look, children, for you see a face that may grow handsomer every day. Not Alger, not Narcissus in the stream. Gazing at it, would the martyr ghost return from the grave ask, is this the face I shaved?" As we search the photographs, bearded to full whiskered, we watch a man in this photo, not yet 40, who might be years younger, and watch him develop into an ageless ancient, which indeed his secretaries called him. He would be considered no worldly success till late in his career, but his many failures read less as mischance than as apprenticeship. The superiority of Abraham Lincoln over other statesmen lies in the limitless dimension of a conscious self, its capabilities and conditions of deployment. In 1863, Walt Whitman watched him during some of the worst weeks of the war. And Walt Whitman said, "I think well of the president. He has a face like a Hoosier Michelangelo, so awfully ugly it becomes beautiful with its strange mouth, its deep cut crisscross lines, and its donut complexion." And suffering stroked Lincoln's energy with penetration and foresight, often hidden from contemporaries, visible through restored photos. And his many failures, as we say, read less as mischance than as apprenticeship. Many of us think of our failures, but some of these mischances, look at them as apprenticeship. We learn as we go along. Now I have a poem of my own, and it's called "In the Burning Away of Time." In the burning away of time, let there also be love and transformations, maybe on a sunny afternoon, just sitting on a bench, on a courthouse porch, dreaming of destinations, demonstrating, as in demonstrating, make that daemon, the fooling fun, tooling words, with extra notes later thrown in with the literatives, the alliteratives, adding the softies with the sibilants, with some illustratives, all too human, assignating fool furtherings, misspelling, pirouetting geese and ganders when well sprung just to be here is more than quarantine for more or less symbolic animals. For more or less, let there also be love and transformations. On that sunny afternoon, just sitting here on a bench, on a courthouse porch, dreaming of destinations, demonstrating as in demon, maybe make that daemon, the fun, tooling, fooling words. The end. Thank you. It's about writing.
Thank you, Ed. I really appreciate your work. Thanks for bringing it to us, and the other poem as well. I hadn't heard that one. Thank you. Either of those. Next up, we have Jim Haratatos. Hi, Jim. Welcome. I know you usually take, there you go. You're on.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, I wrote a poem that is a reflection of what I see from my window here in the living room. It's on the hills, which is just 2 blocks away. So it's called "I Look on the Hills." I look upon the hills that stand before me, down the street, down the block, in green profusion elevating to the sky. The morning mist drops softly on the window pane and covers with a moistened glaze the street below my drip-filled window ledge. The path to hills is edged with 3-story buildings that tell a story of their own, where people strive to meet their needs with daily work and love and playful gazes at the arch and curve of winding paths that string the neighborhoods together with filaments of pavement, brick, and green reminders of more massive trees that fill the nearby looming hills. I wonder if my feet can take me to the rising edge where I can climb that wooded growth to reach the place where other homes at Hilltop peer through tussled trees, whose breeze-blown leaves seem to think what I cannot say. I sit on peak and gaze beyond and have the vista you will not.
Thank you, Jim. Beautiful. You had emailed that you had another poem you're going to read. Did you want to read that one too?
Yes, I have. It's Archibald MacLeish's Ars Poetica, which is Latin for the art of poetry. Okay. A poem should be palpable and mute as a globed fruit, dumb as old medallions to the thumb, silent as the sleeve-worn stone of casement ledges where the moss has grown. A poem should be wordless as the flight of birds. A poem should be motionless in time as the moon climbs, leaving as the moon releases twig by twig the night entangled trees, leaving as the moon behind the winter leaves, memory by memory, the mind. A poem should be motionless in time as the moon climbs. A poem should be equal to, not true. For all the history of grief, an empty doorway and a maple leaf. For love, the leaning grasses and 2 lights above the sea. A poem should not mean, but be.
Oh, very nice. Who did you say that poet was?
That is by Archibald MacLeish,
Great.
who's published poems since 1920s, I guess.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And next we have Mirna Hirschl. Hi, Mirna.
Hi, Jackie. Hi, everyone. This poem has a title, Fellini-esque. I'm sure that everybody knows, but just in case you don't, Fellini is this famous new wave, at that time anyway, of Italian cinematography, famous for his fantastic plot and execution with a lot of whimsicality, dreaming, a lot of lack of realism and things like that. Anyway, it is definitely one of my favorite poems for a simple reason. I really enjoyed writing it. It's the truth. It's quite a departure from anything I ever wrote, and I still love it for that reason. Anyway, Fellini-esque. The sun drowned in pastels of Tuscan hills, pasted on the slowly fading rosy sky. In the middle of an undulating road, there stood an oversized turkey. He spread his enormous wings, and the crimson rose sprang from his heart. When I drove closer, he loomed even larger. He wouldn't move, and when an entire line of cars came to a stop, the total absence of sounds and the rising dust veiled all except the bird in a dreamy haze. When I drove closer, he loomed even larger and refused to move. I'm sorry, I'm repeating this. For some reason, I copied it twice. That's when I saw how beautiful he was. His black and white feathers fanned the mosaic design over a medieval church floor. His red rose shook, shifted into a proper place on his crest, and the procession began. With a theatrical motion, the turkey pulled out of his wing a people crossing sign, planted it on the left bank of the road, and another large thank you sign on the right. Out of nowhere, a couple of sheep, all woolly and beige, materialized and started to cross. Then a shiny-tailed rooster with a speckled hen. Then a couple of bearded goats, followed by the two giraffes in the rust-colored, white-spotted blazers, all on their way to Noah's Ark. The astonished crowd watched the spectacle. The big turkey enjoyed playing a crossing guard. He swung with relish his flexible wing batons, nudged lovingly the slower moving animals, and pecked a little on the dawdling ducklings. Then he winked to his audience discreetly, raised the thank you sign very high, folded his wings over his breast, bowed ceremoniously, rolled up carefully both signs and laid them on the side of the road tenderly. Then, chaplain-like, he tipped his crest to us and slid into sunset that swallowed all colors except the crimson of the rose, which lingered around until a gray hand gently and finally swept the scene away. I woke up in a hot Madrid hotel room. Why did I dream of Tuscan hills in Spain? Where did I see a turkey on a mosaic floor? The people crossing sign? And what of the ducks? Oh yes, Make Way for Ducklings, a book I read to a grandchild yesterday. How the spirits of the night like to play peekaboo with events of the day. In the lull of nascent morning, I discern a faint crested voice. Dreams like love better be left unexplained, lest they lose their charm. Fun.
Equally fun to listen to, Mirna. Thank you so much. I love that. Thank you. And Phil Harris is next. You didn't have another one, right? For a favorite is I don't want to pass you up if you're good to go. Okay, thank you. And Phil Harris, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Great to be here. Great to hear everybody's work. I'm going to introduce my second one first, which is mine, which is called I Wonder, which is the very first thing I ever read at a Belmont Poetry Gathering. So I thought it seemed appropriate for the month. And I'm going to start with Bernstein's God is alive, magic is afoot. God is alive, magic is afoot. God is alive, magic is afoot. God is afoot, magic is alive, alive is afoot, magic never died. God never sickened, many poor men lied, many sick men lied. Magic never weakened, magic never hid, magic always ruled. God is afoot, God never died. God was ruler, though his funeral lengthened, though his mourners thickened, magic never fled. Though his shrouds were hoisted, the naked God did live. Though his words were twisted, the naked magic thrived. Though his death was published, round and round the world, the heart did not believe. Many hurt men wondered, many struck men bled. Magic never faltered, magic always led. Many stones were rolled, but God would not lie down. Many wild men lied, many fat men listened. Though they offered stones, magic still was fed. Though they locked their coffers, God was always served. Magic is afoot, God rules, alive is afoot, alive is in command. Many weak men hungered, many strong men thrived. Though they boasted solitude, God was at their side. Nor the dreamer in his cell, nor the captain on the hill. Magic is alive. Though his death was pardon round and round the world, the heart did not believe. Though laws were carved in marble, they could not shelter men. Though altars built in parliaments, they could not order men. Police arrested magic, and magic went with them. For magic loves the hungry, but magic would not tarry. It rests in an empty palm, it spawns in an empty mind. But magic is no instrument, magic is the end. Many men drove magic, but magic stayed behind. Many strong men lied, they only passed through magic and out the other side. Many weak men lied, they came to God in secret, and though they left him nourished, they would not say who healed. Though mountains danced before them, they said that God was dead. Though his shrouds were hoisted, the naked God did live. This I mean to whisper in my mind. This I mean to laugh within my mind. This I mean my mind to serve, till service is but magic. Moving through the world, and mind itself is magic. Coursing through the flesh, and flesh itself is magic. Dancing on a clock, and time itself the magic length of God. And then we'll go to a much shorter one. As I said, it's the first one I ever read. What would I do with me without you? Do any of us know what might be true? More than I was, less than I have been. Piece of me missing, no nib in my pen. Scratching at life, yet leaving no mark. Like rubbing two sticks without spark. Words are too weak. Should I just quit? Is your sacred fire what keeps mine lit? If my dreams fleeting, passing clouds, will I know wisdom before my shroud? Sewn into canvas, dropped into the sea, buried to nourish a newly planted tree. Life into death, into life still unknown, must know the next life is still our own. I wonder the future is all wait and see. What will you do with you without me?
Two beautiful choices, Phil. Thank you. Thanks for both of those. Next up, we have Lois Freed. Hi, Lois. Welcome back.
Thank you, Jackie. I am going to share two poems, one by our poet laureate, Joy Harjo. She has this poem that I absolutely love. I probably read it to myself at least once a week. And then I'll share a very short one of mine. This one is called Honoring. Who sings to the plants that are grown for our plates? Are they gathered lovingly in aprons and arms? Or do they suffer the fate of the motor-driven whip of the monster reaper? No song at all, only the sound of money being stacked in a bank. Who stitched the seams in my clothes, one line after another? Was the room sweaty and dark with no hour to spare? Did she have enough to eat? Did she have a home anywhere? Or did she live on the floor? And where were the children? Or was the seamstress the child with no home of his or her own? Who sacrifices to make clothes for strangers in another country? And why? Let's remember to thank the grower of food, the picker, the driver, the sun and the rain. Let's remember to thank each maker of stitch and layer of pattern, the dyer of color in the immense house of beauty and pain. Let's honor the maker. Let's honor what's made. Oh, love this one. And the next poem I will share is just a short poem that I wrote just a couple of months ago. There's a Jewish holiday called Rosh Hashanah. It's a high holy day. And there's a cake that you make called the honey cake. And the honey cake is made, you have, your house smells like cinnamon and ginger and golden honey. And this poem kind of evolved from that as I took a walk along the lagoon here in Foster City. So I called it the Honey Cake Sunset. The sun settles on a sultry evening with the smell of green algae rising from the lagoon. The backdrop is a squadron of seldom seen white pelicans dominating the late evening's water traffic. The passers-by couldn't help but stop to gawk at these majestic beauties. I am torn between the love I have for the crimson, orange, and yellow sunset and the huge, somewhat awkward birds dipping their bills in the water to romance the fish to swim closer to shore. Did you drift off course to rest on your way south? Or were you, like me, hypnotized by this golden, ginger, cinnamon, honey cake sunset? Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Both amazing choices. And I love that new poem of yours. Great imagery.
Thank you.
Choices, too. Choices in the poem. Next up, we have Patty Leggett-Watts. Thanks for joining us, Patty. Happy to see you here.
Happy to be here. Thank you. It's been an amazing, momentous day with the verdict that came in, and it's National Poetry Month. And so when I was thinking of Caged Bird by Maya Angelou, and here it is. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
Thank you, Patty. It wouldn't be a beloved poem night without that one. And so when you wrote that you wanted to read that, I knew we wanted to include it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
And next we have Monica Korde.
Thank you, Jackie. And thanks everyone for being here and bringing the amazing, inspiring pieces that you shared tonight. I would like to share 2 poems if I have time enough. One poem is, I would say both the poems would reflect a solidarity for the momentous occasion that we are all experiencing tonight after the George Floyd verdict. And the first poem that I'd like to share is by this new Ohio poet I discovered in the past year. And his writing really, I was taken aback by the images that he threw at me. His name is Hanif Abdurraqib. Let me share the link of the poem in the chat as well, so all of you can visit it if you want. And here's the poem. How can Black people write about flowers at a time like this? Dear reader, with our heels digging into the good mud at a swamp's edge, you might tell me something about the dandelion and how it is not a flower itself, but a plant made up of several small flowers at its crown. And Lord knows I have been called by what I look like more than I have been called by what I actually am. And I wish to return the favor for the purpose of this exercise, which too is an attempt at fashioning something pretty out of seeds, refusing to make anything worthwhile of their burial. Size me up and skip whatever semantics arrive to the tongue first. Say, that boy, he looked like a hollowed out grandfather clock. He looked like $1 million God with a 2-cent heaven. Like all it takes is one kiss, and before morning, you could scatter his whole mind across a field. Thanks, everyone. This other poem, a couple of you would have heard it a few times already, but I just thought that since the occasion demands it, I would love to bring it back again tonight. The poem is called To Rise, and it begins with a quote. There are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There are 1,000 ways to go home again, by Rumi. We kneel before kings and queens. We kneel before gods. We kneel before altars and tombs. We kneel to hold a child into an embrace. We kneel to show respect, to pray, to plead. We kneel in joy, in grief. We kneel to ask someone to marry. We kneel to give someone a CPR. We kneel to ask for forgiveness. We kneel to show gratitude. If kneeling is not enough, we need to lean, arc our bodies towards the light, become a Venus thistle. The ire, the cry, the raised fists, we must remember. We must pick up the broken pieces before we move on. The side of the moon facing away from the earth will always be known as the dark side. That is not where we are, but it exists. This too we must remember. We may not know each other, but every story is ours. We may not sing the same songs, but every song is ours. We kneel to weed the garden. We kneel to sow new seeds. Sycamore, dogwood, oak, timeless, persistent. They first grow down into earth, then up towards the light, bending and knowing how to rise. Thank you.
I can't hear that poem too many times, Monica. Really amazing. And also thank you for introducing us to a new poet that I hadn't heard of before. So that brings us to a close here. We're close to the end. And I did want to say that there are a few people here who are here to listen. And I love that you're here to listen. But I also wanted to just give a moment, if you are here and wanted to read a poem but haven't, let me know and you can put that in the chat. In the meantime, Debbie, did you want to?
Yeah, I have a short poem that I'd love to read.
Thank you, Debbie. I would love to hear that. And I also want to say to folks that Debbie and I and also Patty are involved in Belmont Neighbors Against Racism. And we'd love to invite any of you to join us. We meet the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. And we meet online, and we're like our community here. We've gotten to know each other, and we're informing each other and building community around anti-racism work. So just reach out to me if you want more information. We welcome you to join us there. Thanks, Debbie.
Okay, let me get to my poem. This is called A Blessing for Traveling in the Dark by Jan Richardson. Go slow if you can, slower, more slowly still. Friendly, dark, or fearsome, this is no place to break your neck by rushing, by running, by crashing into what you cannot see. Then again, it is true. Different darks have different tasks. And if you have arrived here unawares, if you have come in peril or in pain, this might be no place you should dawdle. I do not know what these shadows ask of you, what they might hold that means you good or ill. It is not for me to reckon whether you should linger or you should leave. But this is what I can ask for you, that in the darkness there be a blessing, that in the shadows there be a welcome, that in the night you be encompassed by the love that knows your name.
Amazing choice and beautiful reading as well. Thank you. Thanks, Debbie, and great to see you here.
Good to be here.
Okay, last call for any of those of you who haven't spoken. And I love my backup co-host here has messaged me in the chat that not to forget that Lisa had a second one that she wanted to read. So I wanted to check in with you, Lisa, see if you wanted to read.
Yeah, I'd love to read it if I don't want to. If there's.
Yeah, that's great. I'll tell you what. Why don't I give a couple of announcements and you can close us out with that poem? How does that? It's always good to end on a poem. So I just have 2 announcements. Next month, again, is the launch of my book, 7 Skirts. It would really mean so much to me that each of you who is here join me. You've been along with me on this journey since day 1 or day 7, but you've continued to show up to support me. You are my community, and it would mean everything to me that you join me. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to put your work out into the world, and it actually would be a great bolstering of my courage to have you there. So, and if you keep an eye out, the book starts shipping April 28th, so keep an eye out with the Belmont Library and swing by to pick up a copy beforehand. It's May 18th at 7 p.m. And then also for my final project for Belmont, my term ends in June. You may be wondering who is going to be the next poet laureate. Well, that's yet to be determined. We may need break before in the summer, and then we'll begin a search toward the end of the summer. And we may continue to meet informally. We'll have to see about that. But keep an eye out for that information. If you know somebody either in this community or outside the community, we will be looking for our next poet laureate, and that's coming up. But June will be my last meeting and my last month as poet laureate for Belmont. So as my final project, I am trying to gather the largest collection of San Mateo County poets, books of poetry as a donation to the Belmont Library. And so if you are a San Mateo County poet and you have either you were born here or you're writing here, and you have a book of poetry, whether it be published by a publisher, a small press, or self-published or chapbooks, will you please reach out to me? I'd love to purchase it for you and donate it to the library so that generations from years to come will be able to read and enjoy our words here. And please get the word out to other poets that you know. I'd love to get their books as part of the Belmont Library Permanent Collection. And that's it. Lisa, do you want to close us out with the final poem?
Sure. This poem is by a poet who I actually just found out lives in my hometown, Toronto. It's called The Invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. And it's officially about relationship, but to me, it's really about reclaiming the self. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for. And if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals or have been shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it is not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the moon and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after a night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you've studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments.
Thank you, everyone, and happy National Poetry Month. See you next month.